to share the gospel. Because it is a privilege. It is a joy. It can be tough. We can be laughed at. We can be thought of as weird. But people need to hear the good news that Jesus died for sinners. Because without people accepting that good news, they will still be in their sin and they will still be paying the penalty for that sin. So let us make our goal to be unashamed, to be proclaiming the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Let's pray. Oh, Father God, thank you that we are able to have this as our focus this year. Lord, we pray that we'd get a deeper understanding of the gospel through this year, and a deeper excitement about that, and a deeper longing to proclaim the good news that Jesus saves. Help us, Lord, we pray, for your glory. Amen. We're going to close our service with quite an old song, which we don't often do. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross. But let's come to the Bible, and we're going to read not just the motto text verse, but the following verse, just to hear a little bit of the context of this verse. In fact, the motto text itself isn't quite the whole verse. Now, we've recently last year we started a series in the book of Romans, and so hopefully if you want to know much more detail, you'll either remember or you can find another sermon about it. But we're going to be focusing on the first 2/3 of verse 16. But let's just listen to verses 16 and 17 from Romans chapter 1. So Romans chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. For in the gospel a righteousness from God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. So, we have our motto text. Let's just, for a moment, come to God in prayer as we reflect on that, and we just want to learn more from God's word this morning. So let's pray. Father God, thank you that you have given us so much of your word for us to follow. Lord, we're sorry that we don't pay enough attention when there's more than enough for us to get our heads around and really treasure in our hearts. Help us to do that, Lord. Help us to love your word. And as we start this year with this particular text, Lord, help us to understand it and help it to set our vision as a church and as individuals for this year to come. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. So the motto text for this year is, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Okay, so that's our focus for this next few minutes, but in some ways it's hopefully going to be reflected in what we want to do through this year as a church, and it should really every year because of the centrality of what it's talking about. But let's just spend a few moments just trying to unpack what it actually is telling us. So, first of all, what is the gospel? Now, we don't have loads of time now, so I probably think it might be interesting to find out what everyone would want to define the gospel as. And within the Bible, there's a few different ways where the gospel is kind of expressed in a slightly different means. But this is just one summary, particularly from the early chapters of Romans. So the gospel means good news. That's what the word gospel means. Not just any good news, but the most wonderful kind of war has been won kind of good news. The best good news you could possibly have. And it's the good news that Jesus died and rose again to defeat sin and death. So that's our simple starting definition of the good news or the gospel. the good news that Jesus died and rose again to defeat sin and death. So, we're talking about not being ashamed of the gospel. Why would we be ashamed of the gospel? If we consider what the gospel is, how could we ever be ashamed of it? Well, as you can see up on the screen, I'm going to suggest a few reasons that we might be ashamed of the gospel. Now, I will say before we get there, these are not good reasons, but these are reasons that we may be ashamed of the gospel, and we can probably add more to that as well. But here they are. One reason to be ashamed of the gospel: people might laugh at you. If you start talking about Jesus and how he is so amazing and so wonderful, people might laugh at you. Now, actually, in some countries of the world, people will do a lot worse than laugh at you. And I guess if you knew that you were facing a prison sentence or even death because you love Jesus, that might make it an even bigger reason to feel that you want to be ashamed of the gospel. Like I said, it's not a good reason, but it's a reason that people might have. Secondly, people might think you're weird. I've gone through a life of people thinking I'm weird, but not just because I love Jesus. People might think you're weird, though, if you love Jesus, and if you want to express that a lot. And a third reason to be ashamed, it kind of really boils down to this from these last two reasons. We care more about what people think of us than we actually care about them. We might stay quiet about Jesus, we might stay quiet about the gospel, because actually what's most important to us is what other people think of us. More than whether they need to hear the gospel. And actually that should be something that alerts us to the fact that it is a very terrible thing to be ashamed of the gospel, to keep quiet about the gospel, because it is saying that we care for ourselves more than for others. Reasons to be ashamed of the gospel, terrible reasons all of them. How about reasons to not be ashamed? Well, these are all things that come from this motto text. So firstly, a reason to not be ashamed of the gospel, it is the power of God. Now, I wonder, if I were to ask you, what do you think of when you hear about the power of God? What would you think of? What things represent the power of God? Well, you might think of the kind of beauty and the breadth and the extravagance of creation. You see God's power displayed, and people will focus on all kinds of different things. People will see the stars and see how amazing they are and say, that's the power of God. People will see the complex nature of living organisms on this planet and think, that's the power of God on display. People will see all kinds of things and say, look, that's the power of God. Or people might think, well, people being healed, that's the power of God. Or maybe supernatural signs, wonders. You go to a meeting where there seems to really be a tangible presence of God, and you think, yeah, the power of God is here in this place. Do you know, Paul never speaks about any of those kind of things when he talks about the power of God. The phrase power of God is used quite a few times by Paul, 7 or 8 times or so. Every time it relates to the gospel. Because what Paul wants to emphasize is more important than just how amazing the whole universe is, more important than kind of amazing things like healing or that kind of miraculous power. More amazing than that is the gospel itself. If you're talking about the power of God, what we should be thinking of is the good news that Jesus died and rose again to defeat sin and defeat death. So, one reason to not be ashamed, it is the power of God. So let's be excited about the power of God. Second reason, it is for salvation. It is for salvation because we need salvation. And this is actually one reason that some people might put into the kind of ashamed column, because we sometimes don't like to admit that we need saving. But can you really imagine somebody who was out at sea and along comes, now let me put the context a bit more clear. They're out at sea and they're in trouble. they're at risk of drowning, and along comes the lifeboat ready to rescue them, but they don't want to admit they're drowning. They don't want to admit that they need help. Well, you can't really imagine them refusing help. And yet when it comes to something even more serious, which is our eternity, people do find it hard to admit that we need salvation, that we need saving. And the reason is because we've all sinned. We've all done things that are wrong. We've all made ourselves enemies of God. And God's punishment for sin is naturally upon us. We need saving from that, and that's what God did by sending Jesus to die on the cross, so that his death can be for us. And the third reason ties into this, because the reason is not to be ashamed. It is the power of God, and it is for salvation, and thirdly, it is for everyone who believes. See, to receive this salvation, all we need to do is believe. That's what the Bible teaches us. There's so many people, and it's even taught still at schools, that what Christian faith is all about is going to church and reading the Bible and doing so many prayers and all kinds of things. You could go to church every day. You could read the Bible from cover to cover every year. You could pray, goodness knows how many times a day. All those things you could do and still not be a Christian. You could help people across the road like every hour. I don't know. You could be even sharing the good news about Jesus with others and actually not be a Christian. You know, the great evangelist John Wesley, before he became a Christian, had gone to America as a missionary. He came back a bit kind of wondering why it hadn't worked. Well, partly he didn't even have a real faith of his own. What God calls us to do is not to do all these incredible things. Those reflect the fact that we follow Jesus. We go to church, we read, we pray, we share the gospel, we encourage each other, we love each other, we do all kinds of things because we are following Jesus. But the Bible tells us that to receive the gift of salvation, we just need to believe. We need to put our faith in Jesus. And this morning, if you've not done that, if you've not put your faith in Jesus, then I'd encourage you to think very deeply about that. Have you put your faith in Jesus? Well, I suspect many of us, most of us, perhaps have done that. And so what comes with this motto text, even more than the encouragement for us to believe in the first place, is to share that belief, is to proclaim that belief. You see, not being ashamed of the gospel isn't just about denying it. You see, the gospel is a message, and if we're not ashamed of it, it means that we are sharing the message that Jesus died and rose again to defeat sin and death, and that all who believe can be saved. See, what does it look like to not be ashamed of the gospel? Let me give you a couple of kind of parallel examples that are nowhere near as good, but here's a couple. Here's a picture of a few people at a football crowd. They are not ashamed, I'm assuming from this picture, of the England football team. How do we know that they're not ashamed? Because, well, they're wearing clothing that shows it. So this is just a little kind of Brookdale clothing. It's a great thing to show that you're not ashamed of either Brookdale or the gospel. No, they're shown by clothing. They're shown by, the guy's got face paint on. Should we do Brookdale face paint as well? I don't know. They're probably singing songs, chanting, probably talking about it. Do you know, when people get excited about football, they like to share it an awful lot. I don't actually know too many Liverpool fans, but I imagine there's a good number of them who are quite excited and talking about them a lot. They've not lost a Premier League match for over a year. They're at the top of the league. They're doing really well. Why would they not want to share with people who... Jenny, I guess in your house you probably hear it a little bit, yeah? A little bit, yeah. When your team's doing well, you talk about it a lot. And even when your team's not doing well, you still will talk about it. I mean, Samuel came up this this morning with a Tottenham kind of hoodie kind of jacket on. Tottenham are not doing too well, and yet Sandra is not ashamed of Tottenham Hotspur. Maybe a bit embarrassed about me talking about it, but anyway. You see, football fans are not ashamed even when their team isn't doing so well. They want to talk and they want to share it, and it's just a really normal thing for them to do. It doesn't take special training. I mean, I think it's great that we can get, when sharing the gospel, we can pick up tips, we can, all kinds of things to help us, to equip us. But it should also be a natural thing if we're that excited about what it's all about. One other example, a parallel example here. This is just a mother hugging her daughter, is it? Yeah, daughter. Because they're really pleased with them. In this picture, they've graduated. It could be anything. A mother hugs her daughter because she is not ashamed. Why would she be ashamed in this setting, or whatever their child's achievements might be? When they're so pleased, of course they're not ashamed. And yet what we're talking about, the gospel, is even better than the achievements of a child or the achievements of a football team. We're talking about what Jesus has done. And so what does it look like to not be ashamed of the gospel? Well, it kind of looks a bit like this. If you can't see it very well, this is just a person that's made entirely up of the word Jesus. This is probably not a very good way of illustrating it, but everything about us should be about Jesus. The things that we do, the things that we say, the passions that we communicate should be about Jesus. Jesus should be right at the heart of everything about us. From our head to our toes, every part of us should be about Jesus. What does it look like to not be ashamed of the gospel? It looks like Jesus. It's flowing through us in every bit of it. See, Jesus should be the key to every part of our lives, that we would not be ashamed of Jesus and want to communicate it and share it with everyone. And so that's hopefully given us some kind of reflection on this motto text. I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Firstly, I do hope you are believing, and if you aren't, then please do come and speak to me, or there'll be a couple of people down the prayer team afterwards who can pray with you. If you're not sure, if you do yet believe, if you put your trust in Jesus. And for those of us who have, let us make 2020 a year where more than any other year before we are making great strides to share the gospel with people who see the field is white to harvest. But Jesus says the harvests are few. Let us be those who are boldly telling people about Jesus. See, Jesus gives us his commission, not so that we can fail, but so that we can share this amazing truth with everyone. Because God has